How do you plan for an expensive and complex system of automobiles, freight carriers, bus transit, pedestrians and bicyclists? Anthony Bourdain, chef and worldwide travel documentarian, once said, "When dealing with complex transportation issues, the best thing to do is have a cold beer and let somebody else figure it out." So who figures it out for our community? It is definitely something that cannot be done alone. It is a multi-agency community effort between the Planning Commission, City of Bowling Green, Warren County, Transportation Cabinet in Kentucky, the federal government, and our elected officials. The comprehensive plan attempts to address these issues in our high-growth community. While deficiencies do exist in a number of areas, we generally enjoy good road and highway accessibility, rail and airport facilities, an ever-expanding freight network, and growing bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So pull up a chair, grab your beverage of choice, and review the Focus 2030 Comprehensive Plan goals and objectives with us found in the transportation element. Let us tell you about the Planning Commission and the Metropolitan Planning Organization transportation planning efforts, look at some of our ongoing and upcoming projects, and help us brainstorm some of our transportation challenges. For Session 7, we will look at our 1 goal and 6 objectives for our transportation element. Our goal is to provide a safe, efficient, multimodal transportation system that provides for optimum local and regional mobility and supports the sound growth and economic development of Warren County and Bowling Green. Looking at our first objective, for our roadway network, support KYTC and the MPO in meeting their responsibilities to plan, fund, and build a roadway network which supports sound growth and the mobility needs of the community. We do this in a couple of ways when individual developments come in and on our larger projects. We will talk more about that as we move through this session. Second objective, coordinated policies, standards, and programs to support efficient mobility, revise regulatory provisions and development standards, and develop other programs to promote efficient and safe mobility and mitigate congestion. A lot of this is done through our MPO process, our Metropolitan Organization Transportation Planning process. We'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. But the other way we do that again is to require our comprehensive development review process. When a development comes in, we get together with all of our utility agencies and our transportation agencies and have them provide comments on improvements that will be needed with each development. Third objective, pedestrian and bicycle mobility. Promote pedestrian and bicycle mobility through an integrated network of sidewalks, paths, and trails, and through the encouragement of bicycle and pedestrian-friendly streets and land use and development patterns. We are currently in the process of finishing up our pedestrian and bicycle plan. We will have more on that in this session, but in general, there has been a large effort and movement towards expansion of both sidewalks and bicycle facilities in the city of Bowling Green and some in the county as well. A lot of good things happening. We're adding more miles of sidewalk and trail almost on a yearly basis. Objective TR4, the transit system. Expand opportunities for transit alternatives to auto dependence for local, citywide, countywide, and regional travel. The landscape of transit with the COVID pandemic has really become even more difficult. Really decreased ridership and reset the landscape for transit. I think not only our community but others are starting to rethink and figure new ways to increase ridership. Still down after COVID on the public transit system. I think the WKU transit system is starting to see that ridership come back. but we're still looking at that as a holistic approach and part of the overall transportation system, and trying to figure out how that continues to fit in and expand the opportunities as they are in this new era that we haven't quite figured out. Other things we're looking at too is ride sharing, van pooling, and just some micro transit opportunities. And you can Google some of those terms and find out more. Our fifth objective is concerning the airport. Support development of the planned airport at the Transpark consistent with the availability of funding and Federal Aviation Administration and other necessary approvals. So when the Focus 2030 Comprehensive Plan was first created in 2008 and then adopted in 2012, the talk was that a new airport would be part of the Transpark. That has not happened, and I think the likelihood of that happening in this comprehensive plan is fairly low, but we will leave that in there most likely and see where that takes us. I do believe that moving the airport from the middle of the community is probably still a desirable thing at some point in time, but probably not likely in the next 5 to 10 years. That would be a prime redevelopment site. So I guess that one's just kind of on hold. Then our last objective, TR6, concerning freight, support the creation of efficient, safe, multimodal freight transportation system. This is very important as our freight system and our number of companies that we have that move freight and the industries that demand the freight that we have really makes land use paramount in relation to the transportation system and how those trucks and rail and other means, mostly trucks and rail, get from origin to destination and proximity to the highways and interchanges. So what is the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization? It's basically a transportation planning arm. It's a federal program passed through the state. We'll talk more about that here in just a second. We have a Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is more of our long-range plan. And then we have the 6-year highway plan, which is essentially the state funding that comes to our local community. And we'll talk more about all those here in just a second. So how does the MPO and land use decisions get made? We kind of have two main categories. One is large project construction. So both on our local roads, for example, the city of Bowling Green is making lots of improvements lately with Shive Lane, roundabouts, and then extension onto Lovers Lane. They've made improvements to Small House Road. And we're talking about hopefully improvements on Cave Mill Road very soon, which was kind of a collaborative effort with the state coming through with some funding for that. And then we have, of course, our state and federal highways, our larger projects where you see improvements out Nashville Road. Probably the easiest example is that one's being constructed now widened out towards South Warren. And then another phase will be started hopefully very soon from the roundabout to Campbell Lane. So those would be our larger construction projects that we get monies for. Includes everything from the interstates to the interchanges to then the federal and the state highways. Then during rezonings and developments, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, where we have the collaborative review process whenever we have a rezoning or when we have come time for approving construction plans. Staffs of both the state KYTC and the city and the county public works meet and review these plans to require improvements or to require traffic impact studies, which then indicate what improvements are necessary. So that's kind of how that works, and we will talk more about that in a bit as well. But for now, I want to turn it over to Carissa Lemon, our MPO coordinator.
Hi everyone, I'm Carissa Lemon with the Bowling Green Warren County Metropolitan Planning Organization, and I'm here to give you a brief introduction on our long-range transportation plan, the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. We're going to have a series of videos talking about some of the priority recommendations and what some of the various jurisdictions and organizations in our community, what role they're taking to plan and program projects in our community for the long range through the year 2045. But before we get started, I'm going to give a brief introduction to the MPO. So an MPO is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. It is a federally designated organization for any urbanized area with a population greater than 50,000. The Bowling Green Warren County MPO was designated in 2002 and has since been working with local, state, and federal planning partners to plan and program transportation projects for Bowling Green and Warren County. So what all does an MPO do? So like I said, we plan and program projects. We have an advisory committee for highway plan projects, but also Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, BPAC. So we have lots of advisory roles and help our sister agencies in working on priority projects. So the MPO covers highway projects, bicycle and pedestrian projects, and transit projects as well. So the MPO does not deal with design of any sort of project. We do not deal with right-of-way acquisition, relocating utilities, or construction or maintenance of any sort of transportation amenity. So we just deal with planning, programming, and advisory roles for the community, and we work alongside a lot of different partners, primarily City of Bowling Green, Warren County government, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, both central office in Frankfort, and here locally, the District 3 Department of Highways. We also work with other local organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, Public Library, a variety of different folks, Western Kentucky University. So we're always trying to build partnerships within our community and just try to look at what kind of issues are going on with our transportation system, what does the public want, and how can we best move forward and plan and program our projects to serve the community and to provide a safe and reliable transportation system for all. So the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan is a long-range transportation plan for Bowling Green and Warren County. This was developed over the past year by the MPO, together with staff and the MPO committees. So the MTP goals and objectives address various aspects from mobility to health and wellness, accessibility and connectivity, safety, efficiency, reliability, economic vitality, environmental stewardship, coordination, and collaboration. So what is the MTP? The MTP is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. It has a forecast of 20 to 25 years into the future, and it addresses the long-range transportation needs and desires of the community. It includes broad recommendations for transit and bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and it outlines specific project priorities for highway projects. And these priority projects are funded through state and federal transportation dollars. So there are other local projects that the city or the county might do in the next 20 to 25 years. But this plan doesn't detail all of those projects that may come up for the city or the county. So what's included? It includes an existing transportation system overview. What kind of transportation features do we have today, from mileage to transit to pedestrian facilities? It goes through socioeconomic characteristics, population and household trends, along with future projections of how much are we expected to grow by the year 2045, both with population and household, and how those changes might influence both land use and our transportation needs. It goes through commuting and workforce patterns. So where do people work and where are they traveling to and from? How are they traveling to work? About 81% of our community travels alone in their own car. The MTP also addresses high crash locations and other roadway safety and congestion data, so we can help develop projects and programs to mitigate some of those high crash locations or improve safety and congestion in our community. MTP also addresses future transportation demands through projected traffic volumes. And then we recommend a series of priority transportation projects that we'll get into discussing a little bit later. So public input is also another big part of this plan. Back in the fall, we did a public input survey to just kind of ask you all some general questions about what you hope for a transportation system. And we had a lot of folks talking about alternative modes of transportation, and those would include walking, biking, and public transit. And we also had some top priorities for the future, like promoting economic development and encouraging a more walkable and bikeable community. And also trying to work on beautification of our own roadways. As far as advanced technologies, such as autonomous vehicles or park and ride shared services, those were not high on most people's priority lists at this time. So our short range transportation projects, these projects cover the years from 2020 to 2026, and these projects are derived from the 2020 Highway Plan, also the 2020 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program projects, and this is, the TIP is another document that really coincides with the MTP that the MPO develops and monitors over the time frame of that document. So it is a living document in many ways. We do modifications and amendments to that quite often. So the projects that are in this short range list are from those two main documents. The total estimated cost in 2020 dollars for these short range projects through the year 2026 is estimated at $141 million, and there's a total of 22 projects. And some of these include some greenway type projects, sidewalk improvements, and then the remaining of those are primarily highway improvement projects ranging from pavement to safety, and addressing various concerns in the community. This is a map of those short range projects that I just talked about, and you can kind of see the location of those projects that are listed in the short range plan. The long range transportation projects cover the years 2027 through 2045 and are broken up into different intervals. So we have an interval from 2027 to 2032, and then 2033 to 2038, and then 2039 to 2045. So we have 3 intervals within the long range projects timeframe. And these projects have been prioritized and ranked through our technical advisory committee and the input of the participants of that committee, along with staff input and input from our sister agencies. There's an estimated $214 million in 2020 dollars available for funding these long range projects. And there are a total of 29 projects. The estimated total cost in year of expenditure dollars are listed below, ranging from about 98 million to the highest in the final interval of the MTP at 183 million. And here's a map of those long range projects. So we kind of have most of these projects concentrated within that urbanized area of our community. So MTP focus areas, the plan addresses these focus areas ranging from transit improvements. This could be transit maintenance, transit bus shelters, transit routes, just wanting to improve the transit facilities and operations for the community. Covers bicycling and pedestrian infrastructure, so wanting to improve connectivity and accessibility with and between our existing infrastructure, but also creating additional infrastructure. So how can we connect everything that we have, and how can we connect those facilities to parks and schools? Accessibility and connectivity in general, not just with bicycle and pedestrian means, but also with our roadways. So how can we provide more access to our roadways for all users, and how can we better connect our existing transportation system within the various forms between transit, bike, ped, but also within the roadways themselves. Also addressing safety and security. So what measures can we take to improve safety along our roadways? And then maintenance and operations, going through just estimated costs that KYTC, City of Bowling Green, and Warren County In transit, used for maintenance and operations on an estimated annually basis. And then environmental mitigation, covering cultural, historical, and other environmental factors. And it's also important to note that even though these projects are listed in the MTP as priorities, and we would recommend them as some of the top projects through the year 2045, it doesn't ensure project funding, and it doesn't define the exact project scope. So a lot of these details could change if funding does become available for a project that is, for example, slated for the year in the interval of 2027 to 2032. That project scope could change, and the specific details of the project might change as the years progress. So these are conceptual project priorities, and the recommendations are based on public input, a data analysis, and NPO committee input as well.
We're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about how transportation projects get funded. So like many of you in our community, you probably have your own list of transportation projects that need to be addressed today, right now. Well, as much as we'd love to tell you, yes, let's do it, the process to getting a project improvement implemented takes some time and is vetted through a data-driven process. I'm Carissa Lemon with the Bowling Green Warren County Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. In preparation for a public meeting on the transportation section of the Comprehensive Plan Update, I'm going to give you a very abbreviated version of how we establish priority transportation projects and move them from idea to implementation. Of course, if you wish to learn more or have questions, please attend our meeting on August 22nd at 5:30 p.m. or email us at planninginfo@bgky.org. So getting a project from idea to implementation. Every other year, the MPO, along with other transportation professionals across the state of Kentucky, prioritize transportation projects through a data-driven process called SHIFT. You can see it's the Strategic Highway Investment Formula for Tomorrow. And to the right is an image from the 2020 process. We will be working on the 2024 SHIFT process beginning of next calendar year. And at the local level, we have numerous project ideas that our communities and committees rank based on data-driven project scores, along with local knowledge of needs. The MPO works with agencies like the City of Bowling Green, Warren County, Kentucky Transportation, District 3, WKU, and many others to get input for a prioritized list of projects. From a list of about 80 plus projects, we are only allocated to select and submit approximately 7 projects to potential inclusion into the state's enacted highway plan. Planners and engineers across the region and state work to develop the highway plan, which in turn gets legislative input and goes through a series of additional changes. Once the highway plan is approved, it acts as the guiding document for transportation expenditures across Kentucky for federal and state transportation dollars. Currently, we're operating under the 2022 enacted highway plan, where projects like the Nashville Road widening from South Warren to Buchanan Park, improvements to Kentucky 185, improvements near and around the Trans Park, and along Plano Road are included. There are a number of other projects listed for Warren County. As you can see on the map, this is KYTC's interactive highway plan map showing all of the active highway plan projects for the 2022 highway plan. All these green lines throughout here show projects, and these are the project ID numbers. So if you're curious about what projects are funded in Kentucky's highway plan for Warren County, you can go to this map here, and you can look at all of the projects that are listed. You can zoom in on different projects and analyze them, and you can pull up different cost estimates and things like that to figure out when that project might get funded. So some of these that you see, for instance, the one on the southern part of Nashville Road from Buchanan Park to South Warren there, that one's under construction, and we have some others, Nashville Road from the roundabout to Campbell Lane there. You can see project 3-8857. That project isn't under construction, but the various phases prior to construction, like design, right-of-way, utility work, those things are underway until the project gets funded. So after the highway plan, what happens? Once the enacted highway plan is released, funding dollars are allocated to start a project. And these project phases may include design, right-of-way, utilities, and construction. However, not all projects listed in the highway plan or that are constructed and implemented at the local level go through all of those phases. Just kind of whatever the project may need, they may go through those phases. In addition to the highway plan, which guides the spending of federal and our state transportation dollars, the City of Bowling Green and Warren County also have various improvement projects and capital improvement projects that they work on planning and implementing on an annual or biannual basis. And some examples of these are the Weston Street roundabouts going on now with the City of Bowling Green and Kinvale Boulevard expansion project. And then we look at maintenance. So ongoing maintenance is continued and carried out through the City of Bowling Green, Warren County, or KYTC District 3 staff. Over the last few years, bicycle and pedestrian improvements have been of great concern and very important to our community. And I'm here to talk a little bit about how we get a project from, again, idea to implementation for bicycle and pedestrian improvements, whether it's a bike lane or dedicated shared use path. We are working to make more accommodations for our cyclists and our pedestrians, our runners, our rollers, whatever your non-motorized form of transportation is, we are working to accommodate. So we're going to talk a little bit about our structure of how we get a project from idea to implementation and what the organization is and how it exists for bicycle and pedestrian planning. We're going to start off by talking about the organizational structure of bicycle and pedestrian planning, where it falls and who's responsible. So we all fall underneath the umbrella of the Planning Commission, but in particular, our bicycle and pedestrian planning efforts fall under the umbrella of the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. If you haven't watched our other videos about the introductions to the MPO and transportation planning, I would encourage you guys to do that. You can learn a little bit more about the organization, what we do, why we exist, and how we function. But right now we're going to talk about our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and Bike Walk BG and how we plan projects for the future for non-motorized users on our roadways and off of our roadways. So some responsibilities that we have are planning, advising, advocacy, and education. Responsibilities that we do not oversee are getting projects implemented from whether it's design to construction, acquiring right-of-way, or utility. We don't do any of that. That falls under the jurisdiction who's responsible for just managing the actual project. We also don't do trail maintenance. We will take complaints about trails that need maintenance, but we don't actually perform the maintenance on those trails. And we also don't have funding dollars to fund projects or to provide maintenance. So we're strictly those 4 areas of planning, advisory, advocacy, and education. So what is Bike Walk BG? You may or may not have heard of us, whether on social media or out in the community, but we do a lot of community outreach and education. Bike Walk BG is more of the brand name that is the outward-facing community involvement and outreach branch of our bicycle and pedestrian program. And so some of those things look like our mobile bike program. You can see in the photo up on the top right, our Bike Walk BG mobile bike program trailer. And it's outfitted to provide free bicycle repairs to the community. We have a number of bikes for folks to borrow, from kids' bikes to some adult bikes. And we do some bicycle education, safety, and just teach kids about bike safety and rules of the road. And we have some bike rodeo courses which go through different skill levels and skill sets for riding a bike, and that usually includes some sort of safety component in there as well. We also do community events, and so we partner with various organizations or other departments within the city and the county, or just other organizations throughout the community to host pop-up events and planned events. So we do some bike rodeos and community bike rides. We do safety days and free bicycle repair days. We've had open houses at Jennings Creek. We partner with organizations like the Foundry for an event that's coming up in a couple of weeks for a big community bike event. And then we have educational programs. So we partner with after-school programs, scout troops, summer camps, different cycling clubs, and other groups as requested to provide bicycle safety and education, where we just try to get kids encouraged to ride bikes and to do so safely. So that's a little bit about Bike Walk BG. And I know you guys might be curious about how we get more trails built in our community. You guys want bike lanes or bike projects. more sidewalks, or just improvements, more connectivity. These are all things that we recognize and that we are definitely working towards as well. So how do we get there? And again, how do we get from idea to implementation? So one of the things that guides the future, just providing guidance and goals, is our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. We are in the process of updating that right now. We have the draft complete and it's posted on our website, along with a map of some of our proposed projects. You guys can check out. Some of the links will be provided on our page as well for that. But this document just lists some of the focus areas that we want to work on for the future, and some of our priority projects, and we'll talk about those a little bit more in detail here in a minute. So some other things to how we get from idea to implementation. So looking at our bicycle and pedestrian master plan and working with our sister agencies. So collaboration is a huge component of the MPO and of planning in general, and that's something that we find is pretty critical to having successful projects, and that can be look like working with our sister agencies at the City of Bowling Green or Warren County or KYTC to come up with grant applications to fund projects, whether it's a capital improvement project or just a standalone safety improvement project, or just various things. And so you can also get projects included with road projects. So if we are proactive in our planning process and we know that we want a greenway on X street and there is a road project coming for that particular street, we can know that, oh, well, when that project gets funded, we really want to include a greenway or a sidewalk on that particular street with that in that design phase. And so really just collaborating with everyone involved in our community that does transportation implementation and things like that. We involve them in the process. And then grants. Grants is one of the primary funding sources for getting greenways for our shared use paths. To get those funded, we work with the City of Bowling Green and Warren County. I know I mentioned them a lot, but we work well together and continually apply for grants to get greenways and shared use paths funded. There are a number of other grants out there available, but primarily our sources of funding are through grant opportunities, but also the City of Bowling Green. They've done capital improvement projects for greenways and also have the Greenway and Sidewalk program, which has dedicated funding on an annual basis for greenway projects and sidewalks as well. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about our master plan. Like I said, we are updating this right now with the final plan being out hopefully later this fall, early fall. And so what it does is it just outlines priority projects, focus areas, and provides recommended policies and programs for the future. And so some of those recommendations that we have, these are specific to infrastructure improvements. So the loop, regional trails, shared use paths, and bikeways, and unpaved trails. Those are 5 categories that we really look at in the plan for building new trails and building improved facilities for our non-motorized users. And as you can see, some of those range from making contiguous loops around the city to providing regional connections. And then we have our shared use paths, which can be just little connectors that will provide neighborhood connections to trails or connect schools or parks. And then our bikeway projects, while we don't have specific bikeways or bike lanes recommended in the plan, we do look at trying to make improvements in that downtown core around the university and downtown. And then unpaved trails, always looking for opportunities to provide more unpaved trails, whether it's just a crushed gravel trail or a single track mountain bike trail throughout our community. And so we've got a lot of feedback on this proposed loop that we have recommended in the plan. It would provide an approximate 20-mile contiguous loop around the city, that would essentially just connect all of our existing greenways. So right now, with that proposed route, we have 2 proposed routes, and either way it's about 20 miles. And we have about, for the primary route that we have recommended, it's about 8 miles that are already constructed, 3 miles that are funded, and then almost 9 miles that are unfunded. And so our preliminary cost estimates to get that complete are about $10.2 million for that loop project. And we'll take a look at that real quick. So you can see the route of the proposed loop. The green sections, solid green sections on this map are the segments that are already constructed. Those are existing greenways throughout the community. The dotted green lines there are sections that are funded but not yet complete. And then in some of those areas, there's already sidewalk there. For instance, on Lover's Lane near the airport, there's already sidewalk, but there's proposals to expand that to be an 8 to 10-foot greenway, shared use path. And then those solid yellow lines those are the proposed routes for connections to create that loop route. And then your dotted yellow lines there are different routes that you could take to create the loop in the southern part of the city. And I'll wrap up today by trying to encourage you guys to check out our website. We have a lot of requests for some maps and different resources that you could use. So when you look at our website, you can see that our draft bicycle and pedestrian master plan is posted, talking a little bit about our organization. We have different plans that we've completed in the past that you can check out, along with some safety videos. And if you're looking for maps in particular, you can go to our resources page, and you can find a number of different maps that we use, but our online interactive map is the best tool to use, which you can find at the very top of our page under online GIS maps there. If you're interested in more safety and education, we have a series of at-home bicycle rodeo kits that you can do together with supplies that you have at your house, whether it's chalk or cones or tree stumps or different things that you have lying around. And then we have some additional resources there for you guys to check out. And again, if you have other questions about bicycle and pedestrian planning, future trails that you'd like to see get implemented, we encourage you to come to our meeting and provide your input.
Thank you, Carissa. As you can hopefully see, we are really trying to focus our community effort in some key areas. One being system reliability and moving more people through more areas of the community rather than funneling all traffic through a handful of corridors such as Scottsville Road. This comes with the recognition that our main corridors still need major spot improvements, especially at intersections. We are also focused on expanding mobility and building upon our non-automobile transportation network and shaping it into a connected system with better transit, pedestrian, and bicycle facilities. New greenway efforts include constructing a main city loop with neighborhood connections to parks and schools with a variety of trail types. There is a lot of need and limited funds. For more details on anything we talked about, check out the resources on the Session 7 page and contact us with any questions you may have. Come see us at our upcoming meeting. Thank you.